And welcome to Talking Europe on France 24. In December, representatives from almost 200 countries will gather in Paris to nail down a deal on climate change. Now, with less than 6 months to go, momentum is building with environmentalists and politicians all keen to avoid a repeat of the Copenhagen climate talks that collapsed in 2009. Recent developments at the G7 summit were encouraging as major industrialized countries agreed upon the need to limit global warming to no more than 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Hélène Conway-Mouret, welcome to Talking Europe. You're a French senator from the Socialist Party. That's the party of François Hollande, the French president, who will host the summit at the end of the year. Also with us, Francis Dusseux. Welcome. Hello. You're the president of the French Union of Petroleum Industries. And also with us, Lucille Schmitz. You're a member of Europe Écologie Les Verts. That's France's Green Party. Yeah. And within the party, you're in charge of these Paris climate talks. Mrs. Hélène Conway-Mouret, let me start with you because you were watching very closely what happened in 2009. We all remember that the Copenhagen talks ended in failure, in fiasco, some will say. Do you believe that the mood has changed and that there is a growing consensus that a treaty must be signed, a global treaty must be signed in Paris?
I think it is to be hoped for. First of all, I think scientists now have come together to show the impact of human activity on the environment. And I think that a few decades ago, there may have been debates on that, but I think that there is no doubt that now pollution and human activity has a very negative impact on our environment. And I think what we need to do today is to learn lessons from the past. And that's why the approach from the French government is quite different from what happened in the past, where all the countries gathered and tried to reach an agreement sitting around a table, all coming, of course, with different perspectives, with different ambitions and different objectives. So what we have been trying to do since France was the only candidate, we'll have to remember as well, to host this conference, which is the 21st conference
Absolutely.
Of its kind, is to work in advance and to try to bring countries to put on the table their ambitions and to come to a text which is being worked on and finalized for October, and from a legal point of view that all countries will have reached some kind of agreement in advance of the December meeting. The December meeting should only be held to
a sort of conclusion.
Yeah, to have a kind of concluding agreement signed by all participating. So the approach is different. I think the ambitions are quite big, but they have to be, and I think we have no choice anymore. And let's hope that the objectives that will be set will be reached, because in the past, when you talked about a collapse, there was no collapse before. There were very ambitious objectives, except that there were no follow-up, and that's where there has been a lot of kind of.
I want to bring in Lucille Schmitz. From the Greens, what is your perception? Are we heading for an ambitious global treaty in Paris?
Yes, I think so. First, I must say that we are very much, we are very pleased that the French government decided to be a candidate to host this conference, because we felt that it was a very keen commitment for ecological policies. So hosting this conference is a way for us to put the pressure on the fact that France should be an exemplary country in comparison to European partners. We feel that things are really taken very seriously by the government, but at the same time, what we feel is that when you host a conference, the question of organizing things might take might make us forget the fact that we should have a high content and put the pressure on other partners, because you are keen on having things well organized, but the question of having a high content, having an agreement which includes 1,000 countries, for example, which includes which, as Ellen Conway was saying, could help us to have a long-term dynamic, is something very important. And for this reason, we feel that we should involve more organism and more structures than in the former negotiations. For example, we think that local governments, regions, firms should be part of these commitments, and that just having a diplomatic agreement is not the only thing we should do.
Well, Francis Dussart, I remind our viewers that you're the president of the French Union of Petroleum Industries. We know that the aim of the conference is to transform the world towards a low-carbon economy. Are these goals compatible with the interests of your industry?
Of course, I think the oil and gas industry has changed a lot. We do recognize the global warming and the need to do something about it. Now the challenge is really the speed and the future need in terms of energy. Because, I don't know, just a few numbers. Between now and 2040, the energy needs will increase by 35%. The population will grow by 2 billion people. And we estimate that 3 billion people will move to what we call the middle class status. That means, and I think it's not only the oil companies, it's all the energy agencies do recognize that we need to satisfy this human behavior, and growth, economic growth, means energy consumption. So the challenge we are facing, all of us, is how do we manage that? And in my opinion, it's a matter of speed. I do recognize that oil and gas and energy in general is part of the problem, but we could be part of the solution too, because we need to satisfy the people's needs. And there is many ways. Maybe we can discuss that a little bit more in detail. But for example, we do recognize that we have to consume less. We have to improve our consumption. There is a lot of efforts being done at industrial level. When you look at the statistics of the emission from all the plants, the manufacturing plants we have everywhere in the world, the progress are tremendous. Even in China, they do recognize the pollution, and I think they do consider major changes. So in other words, we need to work together. We need not to oppose the energies. We need all the energies to satisfy the needs.
Lucille Schmidt, you want to step in?
Yes, I think that what you say is very interesting. We shouldn't oppose ourselves, but we should be really clear on the objectives we are pursuing. And the question of saving energies and changing our behavior towards energy is something very important. And as a green person responsible for this conference, I feel that the question of savings energy is somewhere not really very precisely debated today, because it's a kind of taboo. I mean, we are having a model of development which implies consuming a lot of energies, and we know that we should change the structure of the energy we are consuming, and at the same time we should save this energy. So I mean, talking for my party, for European deputies, MPs, for the national MPs, I would say that we want to change the structure, we want to save energy, and we want, of course, as you know, the part of fossil fuels being reduced drastically.
Senator Conway-Mouret.
Yeah, I think there's just so many issues to be discussed here today. The first one, I would say, is that big companies have to diversify their activities. And I know myself some of the French large groups that are investing a lot in the renewable energies, because they know very well that fossil energy is not expendable. It's limited in content. We need to go deeper, we need to go further, and it's costing more and more. So all the other energies that are in effect free past the large investments, solar energy, wind energy, and so on. And that will be the point, I think, in Paris, that there is $100 billion marked for a green fund that was from Copenhagen in 2009. There are $10 billion marked for 2015 to 2018 to be spent on renewable energies. If we can invest largely in solar energy and so on, we will have in the future countries that will be independent, because once large investments are made, then that energy just comes free from the sun, from the wind, from the sea, and so on. So I think it's in everybody's interest. Large companies that have the money today to invest and diversify their activities and to plan a future where countries will be independent, and we can think maybe at peace as well, because a lot of the tensions and wars in the past were linked to
Now,
energy, unfortunately.
I want to draw your attention to Europe's binding commitments. As you know, the EU has agreed to decrease its CO2 emissions by 40% by the end of this decade. That's compared with levels from 1990. Europeans are leading by example. Is it a good thing?
It is a good thing in line of what those two ladies have said, because we have to do something. However, I have a concern. We, in Europe, we do represent only 10% of the CO2 emission. 10%. And in France, because of our nuclear power generation, we do represent only 1%. So the fear of all the industrialists I represent is that we are in a big worldwide competition. And you will not save the world by shutting down all your manufacturing plants.
So are the Europeans shooting themselves in the foot?
We have to be extremely careful. I think I recognize maybe the need to show the example, to use the best we can, the resources we have, the technologies that we have, to diversify completely the sources of energy. But in parallel with the unemployment we have, with the very low economic growth, we are in competition with the US, with China, with the rest of the world. So we have to be very careful. We need to be very careful to balance. And again, to me, it's a matter of speed.
Is it dangerous that Europe is so ambitious?
No, not at all, of course. What I wanted to say is that in the history of these negotiations, Europe was really the main actor, because the United States didn't want really to play an important role. It was a question of contradictory positions in their internal policies. But Europe happened to be the major actor. And we should, of course, stay one of the main actors. I mean, today you have United States and China beginning to get more involved in this negotiation. Europe should play an important role, but as you were saying, we have some kind of internal contradiction. We have Poland, we have United Kingdom, and they are not really very keen on the fact that we should decrease very strongly our greenhouse emissions. But we, France, we should put the pressure on our European partners to have a very ambitious agreement. I wanted to add something. It's that our international influence on the question of making a good adaptation for southern countries is something very important for France. We are a diplomatic power. We are not only on economic field on this. We are on the question of influence. So I think that the economic question is very often put ahead. But we should sort of we should think
Hard
of our
power and
influence.
soft power.
Yeah, I was just thinking that Laurent Fabius said recently, well, this is not a 100-meter race, it's a marathon. And it's a marathon that started a long time ago and moved very slowly. And I think now, and that goes back to your first question, are people's minds, have they changed? And I think they have. And I think that for the first time, it is not for the states to come to a negotiating table, and that has been the ambition of France anyway so far, but to involve civil society, to involve companies, to involve associations and so on, and to have all of these consciousness, if you like, rising exercise to be shared, because if it is not, and we only have agreements, there will be the same amount of, I suppose, disappointment afterwards, because nothing will happen. There will be ambitious objectives put on the table and nothing will happen. Just to go back to the point of China, I think one cannot misread what's happening there.
The pollution in Beijing.
I think public opinion is putting a tremendous pressure on the executive of the country. And the Chinese government is forced to change quickly, maybe faster than what they wanted. They have had this fantastic growth at the expense of a pollution that is just choking the cities today.
Now, is there a risk that oil producers will become tomorrow's tobacco companies?
No, not at all. Because again, when we try to establish a forecast for the 30 coming years, you cannot escape from fossil energies. Sorry, but you know that probably. So, but you can do things in parallel. For example, when you look at gasoline or diesel, the consumption in Europe in general and in France in particular will be reducing a lot. We are talking about 30% during the
because we have more modern engines in our cars.
Because exactly, the technology is changing. You put more pressure on the car industry. We limit the emission. So it's clearly we consume less and a much better consumption. Now, the key challenge for the world is really the power generation. And unfortunately, a lot of power generation today is with coal. And coal is the worst energy producer, I may say so.
The most polluting source of energy, certainly.
Germany
and
has
we
a problem with
believe,
it,
as oil and gas industry, that gas will play a key role. The forecast estimate is that the gas consumption will increase by 65%. And
Good
gas
news
is
for
not
Russia and
perfect.
Iran, I guess.
It's not, it's not perfect, but gas is in our opinion, is a relatively good compromise.
Very briefly.
No, I just wanted to say that one can always agree on objectives and values, but the question is the track you define. And the question of defining a new model of development for these southern countries is very important. And I was listening to you, and you are very often referring to technology. I just wanted to say that progress is not only technology, it's human progress too, and it's changing our behavior might be a progress. So don't trust to exclusively technology, I would say, and try to trust human nature and the way we get solidarity between North and South.
Lucy Schmidt, Senator Conway Murray, and Francis Dusseux, thank you very much for taking part in this edition of Talking Europe. Now, please stay with me. I'll return just after the news break on France 24.